Be there as it happens.
97.3 Citi FM is the station. My name is Umaru Sandamado. This would be a very special edition of Eyewitness News. That's because the Citi sports team has been on the air over the past 2 or 3 hours or so, bringing you live coverage of that match between the Ghana Black Stars and the Wild Beasts of Central African Republic. It's an AFCON qualifier, and essentially we have qualified for the 2024 African Cup of Nations in Cote d'Ivoire, and that's after the Black Stars defeated the Central African Republic at the Baba Yara Sports Stadium in Kumasi. Good news, big news for Ghana, 2-1 defeat, and that is an exciting one for all Ghanaians who have been jubilating at all the various pubs and TV centers and rooms and cars where people have been watching the qualification of the Black Stars. So that is why we did not bring you Eyewitness News at 17:30 GMT as we usually do. However, with a few minutes left to go, we'll try and brush through some of the big stories making the headlines for you today here on 97.3 Citi FM. Now, the big story tonight in Ghana has to do with the Ghana Police Service. This morning, we woke up to news that the Ghana Police Service had interdicted 3 officers. Now, the press release that we have seen says the police service has interdicted Commissioner of Police, COP, Mr. George Alex Mensah, Superintendent Mr. Emmanuel Eric JB, and Superintendent Mr. George Lysander Asari in connection with the audio tape which has become a subject matter of investigation by Parliament. The interdiction is to make way for disciplinary proceedings into their conduct in line with police service regulations. So that's a statement signed by Grace Ansan Akrofi, who is an Assistant Commissioner of Police and Director in charge of Public Affairs. Let's try and understand what exactly is happening at the police headquarters, indeed the police service, because the police has become a subject of a parliamentary probe. And just tonight we are hearing that more leaked audios and videos are emerging involving Daniel Bugri Nabu, the former Northern Regional Chairman of the New Patriotic Party, who is actually at the center of this whole recording, who confessed to a parliamentary committee that he was the one who recorded the Commissioner of Police and the Superintendent of Police, both of whom have been interdicted now. Let's speak to someone who was in a very high rank at the Ghana Police Service before retiring, COP Bright Odro. He was in charge of criminal investigations at the police service at a point. Retired COP, you're welcome to Eyewitness News, Bright Odro.
Thank you.
Looking at what is happening in the public space about the Ghana Police Service from where you sit in retirement, what is your view of how the issues have been handled? First of all, there are people who hold the view that this should not have even been public hearing in the first place. Do you agree that it should have been a public one? And if you, whether or not you agree, what do you make of the ugly scenes that are emerging?
Okay, thank you, Umar Sanda. I think I've spoken elsewhere about my views on the tape. And I think I made it clear that I would have also preferred that the sitting would have been in camera so that the officer would have been encouraged to speak out. When it is public like this, you will not be able to speak the way you would want to, because it's not everything that you want the public to know. And the officers themselves, I think, both Commissioner Mr. Mensah and Superintendent Mr. Asari alluded to this, that they were prepared to speak in detail of what is happening in the police service when they are given the opportunity in camera. So I think the investigation or the probe should have been conducted under closed or in closed doors.
How does the police deal with internal matters of this nature? Because there's a parliamentary probe going on, all right. Now we are hearing that there's an interdiction of these 3 officers by the police. How do you do your internal inquiries?
That is what amazes me, because, this tape has been out I think, for more than 2 weeks now, and the police administration has not taken any action. And for Parliament to institute a public probe into the matters about the tape, and then the police administration suddenly coming out with this interdiction order, I think I am not comfortable with it, in my opinion. I don't think it's well placed. It tells us, or it doesn't tell us, whether the police have a copy of the tape. If the police has a copy of the tape, then of course they would listen to the content of the tape, and if they find something wrong with the tape, I mean, those who might have engaged in that conversation had probably not spoken well or misconducted themselves. Then they would have been given the opportunity to make some comments. I mean, to comment on the tape, the content of the tape. Here we have a co-commissioner of police, who we learned was also in line for the IGP position. And so if he's been engaged in some conversation, private conversation, which has been recorded and brought into the public domain, and the police has a copy of the tape, and then the police sees something wrong with it, with the content of the tape, the officer should have probably been given the opportunity to explain himself by way of comment. And then if the comments don't sit well with the administration or the IGP for that matter, then disciplinary action can then be proceeded against the officers or the officer. The administration may not necessarily interdict them. They can set disciplinary action in motion immediately. That the service inquiry or something of the sort should take place if they are not comfortable with, or if the police officers are misconducted themselves. They can carry on with the service inquiry without necessarily interdicting, because interdiction, as far as I know, are placed on officers mostly when the officers are engaged in some criminal activity or serious misconduct. But who is going to say that the conversation that they were engaged in constitute or amount to serious misconduct? Of course, there is nothing to indicate that they were engaged in any criminal activity. So that is out. So now it's about serious misconduct. What shows that what the conversation they were engaged in amounted to serious misconduct? And so if you place interdiction on them, I don't feel comfortable with it, because we should have allowed the case to be properly investigated. Parliament has taken the initiative. We should have allowed them to have investigated to the full, and then recommendations made. And then you and I will then be in a position to know whether what they did wasn't good or not. But in any case, here was a private conversation with Chief Bukri Nabu. Somebody records and somebody puts in the public domain. I don't know whether the person who recorded was the same person who decided to make the public aware. What conduct was that? And for me, I think whoever did that, some people say it's criminal, but I think that the person who did that wanted to pay the officers back in their own coin. I don't know what the officers have done, but the person who did that wanted to pay them back because probably the officers had been in conversation and speaking about some wrongs in the police service. So they had to be recorded. The public should know, and so that they will be seen in some ridiculous manner. So that is how I see it. The interdiction, I think, is not well placed as far as I see, because if they wanted to interdict them, it should have taken place earlier. And again, the officers should have been given the opportunities to comment on the tape. The question is, has the police administration a copy of the tape, and what action has it taken? You just take action by interdicting officers who were expressing views about how police service was being or is being administered. So I don't see, it doesn't sit well with me with the interdiction.
I'm just curious though, COP is like the highest rank of promotion in the police service. IGP is an appointed position. How do you interdict COPs the same way you interdict sergeants and corporals?
That is why I was talking about comment. COP, very high rank. And so if he's done something that is not in the interest of the police service, or you've done something that the administration sees as not in line with police procedures, you give the officer the chance to make his comments.
But it's possible that they've been given that. I just want to know what the procedure, because I've seen conversations around where people were saying the police service cannot interdict a COP and that it has to be the police council. Is that a fact, or that is just people saying their own things?
Well, I think some COPs have been interdicted in the past before. And mostly, the interdiction, I think the IGP needs the blessing of the police council. The police council must be aware that the commissioner is to be interdicted. Because the IGP cannot himself say he has interdicted a police commissioner. I don't think it works that way. You need to maybe play your cards. You need to tell the police council what it is that you want the commissioner interdicted. You need to explain, and if you get the backing of them, then you proceed and place the interdiction.
So this particular one, we don't know if that may have happened or not. So
I can't tell. Okay. But if it has happened, what I expect the police administration signal or letter of interdiction is I am directed by the police council. I'm directed, or the police council has directed with immediate effect your interdiction from the police. That is how I'd wanted to see it, if the police council was behind it. If the police council gave the approval and then the IGP decided to do it on his own, it is up to him.
Okay. Just a quick comment. What is the consequence of an interdiction? This COP, we are told, will be retiring on September 14. That's what he said to the Committee of Parliament. Now that he's been interdicted, what would he suffer?
When you are on interdiction, you are paid half your salary until the interdiction is lifted. And interdiction does not normally go beyond 3 months. So you'll be interdicted after 3 months. Whatever investigations they are doing, they should have completed in 3 months. And then you either go to court or you either are subject to some disciplinary action, service inquiry, or whatever.
But now that he's retiring next week, what happens? Because 3 months, that's too much for 1 week.
I think he will retire. He will retire. That is why there should have been conversation about the commissioner's interdiction. I'm sure there should have been a lot of consultation, conversation about his interdiction.
Could it be that if he's interdicted, then he may not retire with the benefits that ordinarily a COP retires with because he's subject to a probe? Is that something that could come up?
No, interdiction is not a sentence or, let's say, an indictment or a court indictment, or he has been tried and found guilty. Service inquiry is interdicted maybe to pave way for investigation or to pave way for court trial. And so, if he is retiring in 10 days, he will retire all the same. The law says at 60 you retire. And so it's up to them to see what they can do with that, because he is retiring at 60. And when on the 17th or 16th, he is 60 and he is retiring. And then when he has retired, what does the interdiction, what is the meaning? What does interdiction imply? Because interdiction should not necessarily affect a monument, unless I think he has been tried by service inquiry and dismissed, then he is going to lose his entitlement. So when he is tried by service inquiry, there are other forms of punishment apart from dismissal. All the other punishments will not let him lose his entitlement.
Interesting conundrum. We'll see what happens in the coming days. Thank you so much for speaking to us, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That's a retired Commissioner of Police, Bright Odro, speaking to us there on the police interdiction. That's how we wrap up the discussion here on a special edition of Eyewitness News. My name is Umaru Sandamado, supported as always by Beverly London and Kobna Wilson, as well as Sami Wiafi. The technical support from Desmond Nyakun and new media support from Edwin Kwakofi. Return tomorrow at 17:30 GMT. Thank you for listening and have a good night.
City News.